Good evening. My name is Marcy Whitman. On behalf of ADAPT Team Sisterhood in Hampstead, I welcome you to spruce up your space. I would like to thank Women of ADAPT Toronto for joining us and Carol Weir for helping to coordinate this event. And now I would like to introduce our moderator, Olivia Levy. Olivia is a graduate of the University of Ottawa and Parsons School of Design. She has operated businesses ranging from real estate development to medical cannabis production. She also proudly acts as an advisor for the Andy Levy Foundation. Enjoy the program. Olivia?
Thank you, Marcy. So I'd like to start off the evening by introducing Carol Weir, co-chair of Women of the ADAPT Toronto. Carol?
Carol, you have to unmute.
There we are. Sorry. I am Carol Weir, and I am co-chair of Women of ADAPT, a conservative synagogue in Toronto. COVID-19 took everyone by surprise, and at the beginning, we had questions about how we could continue to connect and at the same time isolate. It seems the longer it goes on, the more creative we have become. Our clergy jumped in and set the model for us. They supported, encouraged, and participated in our programming. Women of ADAPT, like so many other synagogue sisterhoods, have creatively continued to provide programming and keep us all connected. From check-in calls to lectures to dining together but apart, setting up a shuk in the parking lot, and just plain schmoozes, we continue with a big thank you to Zoom. When Fran from Team Sisterhood of ADAPT Hampstead contacted us to join them in one of your programs, we of course said yes. Sharing the name of our synagogue seemed reasonable enough to do so. We thank you for this invitation and we look forward to participating with you. Toda rabah.
Thank you, Carol. I would now like to introduce and call on Rabbi Whitman from the ADAPT Israel and Rabbi Seed from the ADAPT Israel Toronto to say a few words.
Good evening. It's a pleasure to be together with my new friend, Rabbi Seed, and it's a pleasure to welcome everyone. I think it's very appropriate that we're doing this just before Purim. First of all, the Purim story begins with a description of interior design, couches of gold and silver, floors of marble. I'm not sure that decor would work today, but it's an interesting introduction. But of course, much more seriously, the theme of Purim is expressed in Esther's words, Lech kenos es kol hayudim, bring together the Jewish people. And that's what we're doing tonight, to be able to join our communities, to be able to share something together. This is really the spirit of Purim. And it's a great pleasure to welcome Rabbi Seed, Carol, and everyone connected with ADAPT in Toronto. It is a great pleasure to be together tonight.
Again, I'd like to echo Rabbi Whitman's words and say, Toda rabah to you and to the entire congregation of ADAPT Israel in Montreal. As you said, it's not only the fact that we share a name, but as we say in the Talmud, Kol Yisrael Arevim Ze Bazeh, that we are responsible one for the other. And even though we didn't know each other before, I think one of the advantages that one of the positives that has come out of all of this is that we've been able to see and to connect with people that we haven't been able to do so in the past. And in doing so, we realize how much we do have in common. So thank you for giving us this opportunity to be together, not just the name, but in so many other important and integral ways. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Rabbi Whitman, and thank you so much, Rabbi Seed. So I'd like to get started. So let's get started, everyone. So with us all being stuck at home these days, I think that the notion of home living has definitely changed. We've put a lot more emphasis on our living spaces, whether that be for aesthetic reasons or functionality. So I'd like to start off our evening by introducing our two guests, designer LEIA WHITMAN KAROLY and professional organizer JANICE SAVAGE. LEIA Whitman Karoly is the principal designer at Gowans Whitman Design, a full-service interiors firm located in Toronto. Having graduated from the New York School of Interior Design, LEIA has 8 years of design experience in New York and Toronto in high-end design, staging, and construction. Thank you so much, LEIA, for being here with us tonight. Our second guest, JANICE SAVAGE, is a professional organizer and founder of Savvy Concierge. Clients rely on her with confidence to alleviate stress and the overwhelming feeling that often accompanies life changes, moves, and events. JANICE empathetically assists with home decluttering, organizing, move management, preparing a home for sale, packing and unpacking, and simplifying estate cleaning. Thank you so much, JANICE, for being here with us tonight. Tonight, we will learn tips and tricks from the pros on how to revamp our space. So let's get started. I would like to thank you all for sending in your questions. We will begin with the questions we have received beforehand. And as we go along, please feel free to ask any additional questions via the chat box below. So our first question is directed to both LEIA and JANICE. I am looking for advice about starting a full kitchen design. I have a good idea about what I would want the kitchen to look like. I just don't know if I have the space to do it. I have pins from Pinterest, which show what I love, but not sure how to translate that into real life space. Go ahead, LEIA and JANICE.
Okay. Hello, everyone. First of all, welcome. It's a good question. I would say the first thing I would say is probably to hire a designer. If you are going to be redoing your kitchen, I think that when you're dealing with the biggest space in your home, that's also probably the most expensive. It makes sense to invest not only in the product, but also in your team. I think that it's really important to have a team behind you that not only can choose nice things and pick pretty finishes, but knows what they're doing and understands the technicalities behind, firstly, ripping out your kitchen, and secondly, putting in a new functional kitchen. That being said, if someone doesn't necessarily have the budget to hire a designer or really wants to do it on their own, I would say that Pinterest is great. Pinterest, a lot of things on Pinterest aren't real. And I think that lots of times people look at it and they find these amazing pictures and they want it in their homes, but it's so much not applicable to their actual scenarios. So I think it's really important to kind of like hone in and narrow down exactly what you find to make it applicable to your space. The first thing I would say, if again, you are going to be doing this on your own and you're not quite sure how to begin laying out a kitchen, there's this kind of like simple rule of thumb, which is called like the kitchen work triangle, which essentially what that means is all of the primary tasks in your kitchen are carried out typically between your cooktop, your fridge, and your sink. And you want those to kind of create a triangle of space. And the idea is that when those three elements are close to each other, you kind of have like a very easy and efficient flow in your kitchen. And you kind of cut down on your wasted steps. So that would be the first thing that I would say to make sure that you have. I would also advise to physically tape out the space that you, once you demo, so that you can get a better sense in person of how much space everything is taking up. So you want to be able to have enough space if you have an island to be able to comfortably walk around your island, to be able to open up your fridge, freezer, all your appliances should be working properly. And then the last thing I would say, probably for someone who is not in the field and again is doing this on their own, I would invest in a 3D rendering. So a lot of times people see floor plans and they can't really understand what they mean or what they interpret to in person. So seeing a 3D rendering of your actual space really helps you to visualize, like as best as you possibly can, what your space is going to look like. And that way you can kind of pick it apart and figure out what needs to be fixed before you actually, order everything and get it going.
Thank you, LEIA. And JANICE?
So first of all, I just would like to say hello, and it's so nice to see so many familiar names and faces. It's always very exciting to start a new project, and I think it's great that the person who sent this question in is doing some research on their own. But just like it's really important to be thinking about what you like, it's also really important to spend some time thinking about what you think you don't want in your space, or maybe what's not working in your current kitchen. Perhaps you're undecided about an island, or you're thinking about maybe a coffee nook. So this is where it's really critical to be connecting with a designer. And the first piece of advice I would give is how important it is to connect with a designer, whether you're going to hire them for the entire project or just hire them on a consultation basis to get some great advice like Leia just shared, just so that it provides you on a very strong footing so that you can move forward and making proper decisions.
Thank you. So we'll move on to the second question. This question is actually for you, Janice. Why should I hire an organizer, and what can you do to help me?
Great question. So an organizer, first of all, is an insured professional. It is someone who is aware of how stressed someone can be when they're looking at the volume of items, whether in their home or in their office space, and someone who can be empathic when we're talking about the emotional connection someone has to their possessions. So if we're looking at maybe downsizing, organizing, or just rejigging a space, it's really important to have someone who can help along the process. Otherwise, it can be very time-consuming and stressful. So a decision of what to do with your items can cause someone a lot of stress. And how does someone actually make those decisions? Because most people are very emotionally connected to their possessions. So some of the questions that I pose to the people that I work with, some of my clients, are, do you like the item? Do you have room for the item? Is it still functional? Does it work? If you gave it away today, could you purchase it at another time? And of course, why is this such a difficult decision for you? Are there other people involved that need to be consulted? And is there a financial component that needs to be addressed? And many people will hire or think about hiring an organizer when there's an issue connected to a life cycle event, because many times that can invoke a lot of stress, that people could use some support in making decisions. And that can be whether it's a birth, whether it's a new job, whether it's like during COVID, people coming home and office space need to be found in a home, whether it's at a dining room table or if it's finding an actual room, kids' rooms becoming mini classrooms. So an organizer will look at that space and actually reorganize it, repurpose it. The other area is when it comes to a move, an organizer can help prepare a property for sale. That's decluttering and of course pre-staging. And then once the property is sold, packing, unpacking, and organizing a client into their new residence, and being helpful with an estate clearing. So when someone passes away and a property needs to be emptied, that's a really good time to call in an organizer to help with that. And a competent organizer has many trusted partners that they can call upon, whether it's an art appraiser, whether it's different donation opportunities, whether it's for clothing and books and furniture. And of course, every organizer has someone that deals with their garbage removal. So a professional organizer can really help guide and streamline and take care of all these life events that can cause someone a lot of stress.
Thank you, Janice. I really have to agree with you. I think that a lot of people don't realize how stressful and emotional decluttering and organizing actually is. So let's move on to our third question over here. I think we have some photos. So this is of a powder room, and the question is directed towards Leia. So powder room, would like to keep the sink and the toilet and update everything else, including the light fixture. Also, could you mention how to find lighting to fit certain spaces, tips for powder rooms, choosing a mirror, should the frame match the taps, should the other hardware match the taps, or mirror matched if it is framed? How do I choose the window coverings? Are there more economical options, places to shop?
So I'll start by saying that I love powder rooms. They're one of my favorite spaces to design, just because I feel like they're like these tiny little jewelry box rooms where you can really pack a punch when it comes to design. And you can also do a lot of things that you're kind of scared to do in other parts of your house, because it is hidden and because it really is for guests. It's really an opportunity to do something fun and bold. So just by looking at these pictures, the first thing that I would say as a quick update would definitely be to remove the curtains that are kind of going across the window, and the same thing with the valance. I would probably replace them with just a very simple inset Roman shade. And you can definitely remove the plastic lines behind them. I'm assuming that this window is just for privacy purposes, obviously if there's a neighbor on the other side, but you really don't need that much fabric covering the window. I think that it just takes away from everything else in the space. And I would kind of just want the window to blend in with everything else. The next thing I would do is I would definitely wrap the walls in some sort of cool, interesting wallpaper. So really it's about, you know, like what you love. Like if you are into modern and bold, then you could go with something cool and geometric. If you want it to be, you know, really beautiful, you could go with like a more whimsical, maybe metallic type of wallpaper. But something really pretty and detailed and ornate, I think works really, really well in a small space like this. I love the vanity. I have no problem with it. I would definitely eat that. I would probably update the faucets with a similar widespread version. In terms of mixing metals, I'm all about mixing metals. I don't believe that you have to have, you know, all brass or all polished nickel or anything like that. I will say that you don't want your metals to compete with each other. So if you have, you know, a brass faucet that's a satin brass, don't go with a polished brass somewhere else. Same thing goes with silvers. If you're going to use a chrome, I wouldn't really necessarily use polished nickel in the space as well. That's where things tend to sort of end up feeling mismatched. So definitely mix your metals, but I would say make sure that they don't compete with each other. Another easy upgrade to modernize the space is where you have, I see one longer towel rack and one towel hook. Those can easily be updated for something just a little bit more sleek and again, modern. I think that with this like very traditional pedestal shape of a vanity, it would be cool to kind of juxtapose things with some more modern features all around. I would definitely go with a simple framed mirror, nothing too ornate. Again, like you really want to let certain aspects pop and not make it too busy. So if it is about the wallpaper and the vanity, I would kind of let everything else sort of blend into each other. And in terms of finding cheerful, honestly, like a lot of stores nowadays are carrying much more designer caliber items than they ever did. So like stores like West Elm, CB, like they're really killing it now. They have really cool accessories, especially for bathrooms. They have great stuff. It's super affordable. When it comes to lighting, I love Wayfair. I think that they have really great inexpensive options. I would say just be careful and cautious of the ones that seem a little bit too good to be true, that are, you know, like look at it and you're like, why is it so cheap? It's probably for a reason. So I would stay away from those, but anything that you find that seems like a reasonable price and is from Wayfair, I think that you can trust. And I would say the place to splurge again really is on, I would say, the wallpaper and the drapery, and everything else you can really accessorize, and it doesn't have to be expensive to make it nice.
Thank you so much, Leia. So our next question is for Janice, and we have some photos to accompany as well. So Janice, what are your top organizational tips to share during COVID?
So two tips that I have found really helpful for my clients during this time, because let's remember, this is a time that a lot of people feel stressed out. There's a sense of loss of control. People feel even information overload. And these feelings are all really normal. So there's a time of uncertainty, and people have had to redefine their priorities. People are at home a lot more, kids are home. So there's a lot of things happening. And these two savvy tips that I'm going to share are really about gaining a little bit of control back into our lives during this period. So the first savvy tip I want to share involves really picking one small area, a strategic area in our home or office, to organize and declutter. Whether it's a toy chest, whether it's a medicine cabinet, whether it's the dining room table, one drawer in a large cabinet. But let's be really, really strategic and pick just one area, because our goal here is success. Our goal is to finish something and feel really good about it. So I would encourage you to use a timer. And if you think it's going to take about 15 minutes, set it for 15 minutes. And if it takes you a little bit more, that's okay. Allow yourself that time. So if we've got a table filled with items and we want to declutter that area, then let's go through and actually pick up each item and make a decision. Is this an item that we're keeping? And if we are keeping it, then at some point we need to figure out, is where it's sitting, is that the best place for it? And if we're not going to keep it, is it something that we can donate? Is it something that should be recycled? Or is it something that belongs in the garbage? So we go through a small space. Again, we're going to be really strategic because we're looking for success. We want to pick one area, and we want to be realistic, and we want to make it better. So that would be my first savvy tip. The second savvy tip is regarding our mindset. So when we think about mindset today, a lot of people will think about doing yoga or a yoga breath or journaling, and all that is really, really important. But I want to flip it for a minute. I'd like you to think about mindset in relationship to decluttering. And what do I mean by that? Well, I want you to think about doing your best. I want you to think about non-perfection. And I want you to think about being realistic in your life, in your situation. So the example I want to use is I was talking to a client recently. She called me up and her pantry is now very disorganized. And of course it's disorganized. She's got all her kids at home. They're not back at school yet. Her husband is now working from home, and her part-time job finished because of COVID. So she's home. So she has all these people in her house who are constantly hungry, who are constantly going into the pantry. So I asked her if she's still able to find things in the pantry, and she told me yes. I asked her if we could work together and strategically come up with a plan to make the pantry a little bit better, keeping in mind that it's not going to be the way it was before COVID, because everybody's still at home. And until the situation changes, this is the new reality. And she acknowledged that. So she acknowledged that it's okay that it is the way it is. We could make it a little bit better, but it won't be the way it was before. So my two savvy tips to share tonight are really strategically organize one space and strategically organize your mindset.
Thank you, Janice. This next question is also for you. So I recently downsized to a small 1-bedroom, 1-bath condo with only a small front door closet and a small bedroom closet. These photos are in my office solarium. I have no places left to store photos, linens, documents, etc. I hope that my mess is chosen. Janice.
First of all, thank you for everyone who sent in photos. We really, really appreciate that. So when you downsize to your condo, I'm wondering if you downsized and decluttered all your possessions. And if you did, then that's great. Maybe we could revisit some of the decisions you made. And if you didn't have the opportunity to downsize and declutter your possessions, well, maybe now would be a really great time to try and do that. And before I address the the storage area that we're talking about, I would really like for you to walk through your condo and make sure that everything in there you're sure that you're keeping. So when you're walking through your new home, your new space, you're making a concerted decision whether these are the items that you're keeping. There's nothing that you're donating, recycling, or discarding. And you may say, Janice, I already did that. I'm keeping everything. And I would say, okay, fine. Then let's take a look at the cupboard that we're looking at right now. Everything is still very small on my screen. I don't know what it's like for anybody else right now. So the other thing that's really important when we're talking about a condo is I'm wondering if there's any storage if there's any storage capacity in a locker, because that's also really important to take into account when we're talking about opportunities for keeping items. So if we look at the cabinet that we're talking about, I would ask you to empty the entire cabinet. And again, take everything out and make sure that everything in that cabinet you're going to keep. Or are there things to donate, recycle, or garbage? And I also noticed on the pictures, there are things on the floor beside it. Are those things that you've already gone through? Have you made a decision about those items? Are you keeping those items? And if you tell me, Janice, I've been through the entire cabinet and I am keeping every item there and everything that's on the floor, then I would suggest perhaps that cabinet is too small. Maybe we need to get something bigger. And if all the papers that are there, that this is your little office area, then maybe we need some kind of filing cabinet. Or maybe we need to consider having something custom built where it would go, wall to wall and take in some of the height so that you would have even more storage. And the last thing that I would consider is buying some kind of bins and labeling them so that everything in there really has a place. But the first step is really to go through every item, make sure that this is where it belongs. And if that is the case, then I really think we may need something bigger. That would be my suggestion for this area.
Yeah, Janice, just speaking as someone who was on the receiving end of your services, I think that it's so funny because when I did the same thing in my house and I kind of went through, and when you came in, I said, oh, I already purged this area. Oh, I already purged it and it's already done. We don't need to do it. And then when we went through it together, I think I ended up with like 10 garbage bags per room of things that I didn't realize I didn't need until you're there. And, I was talking through it with you and actually picking up every item. I don't know what it is that makes such a big difference.
Well, I think it's like what you said, Leia. It's someone else coming in and asking you questions about items. And it's also, there is something very powerful about actually picking up an item and looking at it and reevaluating it. And also allowing yourself to say, I've used this, it served me well, I don't need it anymore. There's something very freeing about that. So, and that's something that is really great to encourage people to think about.
It was difficult, but I did it.
We did it together, Leia. We did it together.
Definitely.
But that's back to like what we were saying at the beginning. It's actually a very emotional process getting rid of a lot of these things because we hang on to them even though we don't necessarily need them. And that's what clutters them.
And Olivia, that's why it's not about going in and encouraging people to throw things away, because that's not what a professional organizer is doing. We're posing questions. We're making a client rethink something. And sometimes it's just about sharing that we don't need to keep that item anymore. It served its purpose, or it's broken, or maybe someone else could use it. So it's really about talking it out and giving someone permission sometimes to say, I don't need this anymore. And also, as Leia knows, sometimes we can have a really, really good time while we're doing it. So it can be very enjoyable.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Janice, for answering that question. So we'll move on to the next question, and this question's for you, Leia. And we'll just wait till we get those two photos up on the screen. So the question is, I am sending 2 pictures of my house that I would like to upgrade. Any ideas or suggestions are really appreciated.
Okay. So I think that it kind of depends how far you want to take it, right? Like when I look at a space like this and someone tells me they want to update it, like you can go from just a simple paint update to ripping everything out and starting over. So I think that it's important to think about exactly how far you want to go. I'll start with what I would do. If you're just looking to do, you know, some cosmetic touch-ups, I think that a fresh coat of paint make the world of a difference. It kind of looks like there's 2 different colors going on the walls. Like one is more of a taupey color, and then there's a gray color. So I think that unifying the walls and painting them all in a fresh coat of paint will make a huge difference. The other thing that's kind of a relatively quick and easy update is replacing the baseboards and the door casing. So right now it seems that they are kind of smaller and a little bit more like traditional. So I think if you replace them with something a lot taller and more sleek, like with like a flat stock type of profile, that is a great way to update the space. The next thing that you could always do if you wanted to get into your floors is sand and stain your hardwood. It looks like you have really great hardwood. It's in really beautiful condition. I think that like that cherry kind of warm red undertoned color is a bit dated. So if you wanted to sand it down, like I said, and stain it more of like a whitewashed oak, that could really help to update the space. And I think that obviously the biggest thing in this space, which could use updating, is the railing. So taking away that sort of like traditional, very thin, almost like flimsy looking railing and replacing it with something a little bit more sturdy, not just physically, but you know, in appearance, would make a huge difference. You could replace it with like a fully glass railing. You could replace it with something that's metal, but that has a little bit more definition. So I would probably go into a black or a brass and kind of get away from the white, especially if you're going to be painting white on the walls. And the last thing I would say is it's hard to tell, but it looks like at the back there, I'm not sure if it's the heat back, but wherever those grill vents are, a nice easy update that I love to do instantly like refresh a space is to replace those. So now they make these vents that are completely seamless. They're called Aria Vents, ARIA, and they're essentially drywall flush vents. So you install them in place of any, you know, vents on your floor and your on your walls, wherever you have them, and they completely disappear. They're finished in drywall, so you can paint over them, you can wallpaper over them, and they essentially disappear. So it just removes that kind of like plastic metal grid that breaks up either your flooring or your walls. And I think that that is a really, and they're not expensive. I think that that's a really great way to, again, like update the space. And the last thing I would say is there's a huge wall in the stairwell that is like screaming for a huge piece of art. I love massive oversized pieces. I think that those tend to have a lot more of a purposeful feel than some small scattered pieces. So a really interesting piece of artwork, I would say, on the stairwell with like a pop of color would be how I would finish it off.
Thank you, Leia. This following question is also for you. So I have 3 kids and would like them each to have their own room. Currently, only 2 do, and the baby sleeps in my room. I have a very large master bedroom, too large, with a lot of unused space. I am planning on dividing the room by building a wall and door. However, I don't know if I should section off a large piece, leaving me with no window, or split the 1 window in the room into 2, which would make the baby's room smaller. In other words, how important is a window in a master bedroom?
Very important is the short answer. I think that you don't want to get rid of your window in your bedroom. I am a huge believer in natural sunlight. I think not just for aesthetic purposes, but for like your mental health purposes. I think it's so important to wake up every morning and have some natural light and sun coming into your room. I think it helps you sleep better. It helps you breathe better. The airflow is important, especially in the summer. So I definitely would not recommend removing your window from your bedroom. That being said, I would probably, if it was me, be selfish and, like I said, keep the window on my side of the space and close off the baby side. Firstly, because if it is more of a nursery type of space that a kid might grow out of in a few years, I think it's okay if a baby's room maybe doesn't have a window, especially because, you know, windows and window shades and treatments and rollers and anything like that can be a bit of a hazard to a baby anyways. And babies really do darkness, especially when they sleep, and in the morning, it just makes everybody happier. So I would definitely keep the window on your side. If you split the wall in half, you lose the function of the window entirely. So I wouldn't do that at all. I would keep the window on your side, and then I would find ways to illuminate the nursery or the baby's room artificially. So, you know, some sconces on the wall or like a really cool floor lamp. I think is more than enough space in a nursery, and I think that it's totally fine not to have a window in there. So that's probably what I would do.
Thank you. So we have a picture here for our next question. And the question is for Janice. How do I tidy up this desk? Everything is used daily.
Okay, wow, that is some desk. So I was actually working with a client prior to COVID, and her desk looked very similar to this desk, almost completely covered also. So what we did is we started just to put things together, make a little folder of, let's say, all items that were connected to the home, whether they were invoices or bills or receipts connected to her home. And then another folder connected to her business, invoicing, etc., and connecting to a client and connected to projects that she was working on. But each paper needs to be picked up and determined where it belongs and what it's connected to, so we can begin to put like items together. So one question that I would ask the person that sent this in is, there's a lot of paper here, a lot of hard copies. Perhaps some of that can be taken care of electronically. I'm wondering how necessary all the hard copies are. I'm also noticing on the desk there's at least 3 different containers to hold pens. Well, there's a lot of pens and paper and pencils there. So I'm wondering perhaps if maybe we can just have one small container to hold some writing utensils. And if there's drawers, which to me it looks like there may be drawers, I would suggest all the drawers be decluttered, and all office supplies, pens, papers, rulers, all kinds of things to be put in the drawers. So that would free up some space. And then it looks like that there's a printer there. Maybe there's a small adjacent table that we could take the printer off the desk, because our desk is prime real estate. Our desk is our priority of where our work's getting done. So I'm not sure that our printer actually belongs there. And with wireless connections, we can actually move it a little bit farther and it should be quite workable. So the comment that was received with this photo was, every item is used every single day. Okay. However, you're not using every item every moment of the day at the same time. And we know when we think about productivity, our productivity increases when we focus on one item. And of course, it has to be the correct one item to increase our productivity, but we're talking about focusing on one thing and not focusing on 25 things at the same time. So what I would encourage anyone who has a desk like this is really to take a step back and think about what are your priorities? What are your priorities in your business and in your personal life? And what are your long-term and short-term goals? Because your short-term goal for today, the project that you're working on, that's what needs to be on your desk. And everything else belongs somewhere else, whether it's in a folder, whether it's in a filing cabinet, whether it's on something else on your desk that is an organized way of making something retrievable easy. Because we know when it comes to productivity, walking in and starting your day with a really clean desk is essential, and clearing your desk at the end of the day is also really important. Now, you may say to me, Janice, every single paper on this desk is critical. There's nothing that I can remove. So then I would say we need a fantastic filing system, and a filing system that really has to be geared to your success. So maybe we're going to file things according to date, or according to project, or according to client. But I really believe that we could get rid of some of the items on your desk, because your desk is where your most productivity is going to occur for your business. And so when we build a system, some kind of filing system for you that's really easily accessible and works for you, then your productivity will increase. And of course, I haven't even touched on, your emails, organizing your emails, and all kinds of potential that is on your computer. And of course, if this is an office with a door, then you have less distractions so that you can really focus on what you want to do. But it all begins with picking up your paper and looking at each paper and making a decision. That's where I would start.
Thank you so much, Janice. So our next question is also for you, Janice. Here we go. My closets are stuffed. How can I organize them in an aesthetic and inexpensive way? My 2 closets are squarish, lots of plastic bags and housing lots of stuff. The one in the front hall has 2 parallel bars, too high to reach without stretching to the limit. On the side is one of these 3-tier baskets, which hold my gloves and mittens. The bedroom closet is easier, but there too, the bars are too high, and often a dress or blouse falls down, and I have to go hunting for it. Frankly, I ought to be ashamed of myself.
So first of all, I want to address the last comment. You don't need to be ashamed of yourself. Things happen. I'm really happy with what you wrote in, and that you want to make this a bit better. But I would appreciate you not having any shame or embarrassment connected with this, because everybody has areas in their home that we all need to work on. Leia's in many homes, right, Leia, where things need to be rejigged, reorganized. That's why you reach out for some help. So closets can be very challenging. And if you're not in the position where you can redo a whole closet, then we need to work with what we've got. So I would ask you to take out everything in the closets and categorize them. So putting all, let's say, winter coats together and spring coats together and fancier clothes together and winter sweaters or winter skirts together and t-shirts together and workout clothes, so that everything's in a category, so that you can really stand back and look at all your items. And you mentioned that there's garbage bags in the bottom of the closet. Well, if those are filled with clothing, then they need to be emptied and really looked at also. And if they're not filled with clothing, then we need to take them out and find them a new home. So in order to really declutter, we're going to get really, really messy first. Okay, that's the first bit of advice I can share. And then it involves actually picking up each garment and making a decision. Does it fit? Do you like it? Will you wear it? And of course, when will you wear it? And it's really critical to go through those questions in a very kind way. And we're allowed to change our mind. in what we like. We're allowed to be cognizant of our bodies changing, and certain things are no longer appropriate. And by decluttering, we can make room for something new. So if you look behind me at my shelving unit, and I'll move over a second, you can see there's room, right? It's not filled to capacity. And I do that on purpose so that I make room for something new. So maybe I want to get a new book or I want to get a new plant, but there's room for something new. By decluttering, we can make room for something new. And I would encourage you, when you're looking at your clothing, to have that in mind. So as you go through the process of picking up each garment and making a decision, I would imagine that at some point there will be some items that you may want to donate, or you may feel that they're not in the best shape and it's time to say goodbye to them. And that's okay. And you talked about that it's hard to reach some of the bars to hang your clothes and things fall down. The most economical method to fix that is I would encourage you to hire a handyman. And let's make the bars work for you. If they need to be lowered, let's lower them. Let's fix that up so that your closet really can work for you. So I had a client that I was working with, and she also had a very similar problem. When she walked into her condo, it was a very tiny closet that really just held her jackets and her coats, and her closet in her bedroom was also very small. And with what her profession was, she had a lot of certain kind of clothing, and there was very little we could really downsize. But we did go through it, so there were some items that we could make that decision for. And then what we decided was, because she had a storage locker in her basement, items that were off-season and casual, not her good clothing, but off-season and casual, we stored in her locker in the basement area. But that worked for her. So what I would encourage anyone is to really, let's be as creative as possible, and let's find a solution for your specific situation. But it all begins with going through each garment and making a decision and being kind to ourselves, because things change, priorities change, bodies change, and we need to be really cognizant of that. That's where I would start with a closet.
Thank you so much, Janice. Some great tips. So this next question is for Leia. What are the parameters for hanging a chandelier above a dining room table? How much space should there be between the table and the bottom of the chandelier?
I think that when it comes to lighting and tables, scale and proportion are really important. So I don't love when someone has, like a really long dining table and then this kind of like skinny, sad fixture in the middle. It just kind of doesn't do anything. So my rule of thumb, I would say, is that your light fixture should be at least a third as wide in diameter as your table. So a 9-foot table, your fixture should be, let's say, like 36 inches diameter. Anything less than that, and it's going to start to feel like kitchen island pendants. It's not going to feel appropriate to the base and to the grandeur of your table. I love to do 2 dining room fixtures, actually, if your ceilings are open and you have an electrician that's able to come in and do that. I think that, airspace is a lot of dead space when it comes to furnishing and decor, and I love to be able to fill it up. So you really want to create proportion top to bottom. In terms of height, I think that it's important to have a happy medium between, like having a nice atmosphere, but also practicality. So you want to have a fixture that kind of is like emanating a warm glow and is illuminating the table, but it also, you don't want it to be in your face when you're standing around the table and you can't see the person on the other side. So I would say between 32 and 38 inches off of your table is a nice place to be. I usually like to land at about 36 inches. So kind of have to work backwards and do the math when you're looking at a fixture. So if your table's 30 inches high and your ceilings are 9 feet tall, deduct, the height of the fixture, and then make sure you have enough space to be able to leave 36 inches. Most fixtures are adjustable, but not all of them are. I learned this the hard way. So I would say definitely before you buy anything, make sure it is not too big and not too small, because most of the time you can't return light fixtures, speaking from experience.
Thank you. I think sometimes we don't realize how important lighting really is in the room, but it really, really is so important, right?
Yeah, sure. And not just decorative lighting, you know, the way that you, if you're building a house, and you're laying out your pot lights, your LED strips, you know, your cove lighting, your low voltage wiring, that's really where a house starts to get that like custom built-in feel. And it really, really makes the world of a difference. So when you're laying out your pot lights and you're doing your electrical and your reflected ceiling plans, I would definitely take a lot of time to think about exactly where things function. I can't tell you how many times I've come into homes where clients have done things without a designer, without a professional, and they just have pot lights all over the place. Nothing makes sense. Nothing's lining up with their cabinets, and it's just a disaster. So take the time and think about it for sure.
Thank you. And here we are at our last question of the evening, and this question is also for you, Leah. So my personal design style is eclectic. How should I unify an eclectic room so that it looks intentional?
I don't want to start every question or every answer with hire a designer, but I kind of feel like this one is asking for it. No, but in all seriousness, the way to execute a look like this, it's really about restraint. So I think that if you have an eclectic style and you like sort of interesting, funky pieces, the key to nailing it is not to go overboard. Anybody can walk into like, you know, a cool showroom and pick out the coolest pieces of furniture. If you do that and bring that into your house, it's not going to look designed. It's going to look like a showroom. So what a designer does is they take all of these interesting eclectic elements, but they ground it on a neutral palette. So I would say pick one or two things, you know, if it is, you know, a chair with a very interesting shape, or if it's a funky, eclectic light fixture, pick one or two things and let everything else kind of be the backdrop for it. So you don't want to have competing elements. I can't tell you how many times I present palettes to clients and they love most of it, but then they get stuck on like one or two items and they're like, I don't like love this little accent table in the corner, and I don't love this one pillow fabric, but that's like really kind of the point. Again, like if you loved and were obsessed with and thought every single piece was the coolest piece you've ever seen, that's where it doesn't feel designed anymore. So I think that making things feel purposeful and intentional is about restraint. And I know it's hard to do because I know that when people find things they love, they want to fill their home with it. But I would say spread it out and just keep in mind that you want everything to be on a palette that is neutral in order to make it work.
Great. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Janice and Leah, for answering all these questions. I hope it was informative. I hope all of our participants have enjoyed this special evening and a collaboration between two great minds. I think we all need a designer and a professional organizer in our lives. I want to thank you all, to the participants, for joining as well. And once again, a big, big thank you to LEIA WHITMAN KAROLY and JANICE SAVAGE. For professional consultations with either Leah or Janice, please feel free to reach out to them directly via email. You can find their coordinates in the chat box below. Leah can be followed on Instagram, for those of you who have Instagram, at Gowans Whitman Design. Both Adath synagogues have amazing and exciting future programs. Their websites are listed in the chat as well. On behalf of both Adaths, we look forward to seeing you again soon, and hopefully it will be in person. Thank you so much.
I would like to thank Olivia for moderating our event tonight. I also would like to thank Stu Gutman, our program director. I would like to thank Carol Weir from Women of Adath Toronto, and my excellent, excellent co-chair, Fran Cohen, for it's a pleasure to work on this project with you. And thank you, Leah, Janice, and Olivia. And good night, everybody. Stay safe. And I hope we see you in person soon. Good night.